Oh, I'm in a great mood, people. I'm in a great mood. Why am I in a great mood? Because everything I recorded the past few days has audio issues. So we're back in the recording booth again for you because I want to give you good quality. Okay? That's what I want to do. I want to give you good quality. And the only way I can do that is by re-recording everything. So we're going to try it again. And then we're going to see what happens. And if this turns out also shitty, I might just throw away my whole creating career and then just talk to you guys on my phone on TikTok. I'm done with YouTube. I'm done with Instagram. I was never on Instagram, but I'm done with Instagram anyway. I'm just going to go back to posting dance videos on Instagram, nothing on YouTube, and I'll just go over to TikTok and live there like everybody else. I don't want to do that, though. I hope the audio issues are fine in this one. I hope they're fine in this one. Audio issues are great, but my camera still autofocuses. I love technology and IT supporting it myself. Woo! I love doing everything myself. What's good, everybody? Welcome to the archives. Welcome to Entro Archives. I'm Entro. Welcome to my book archives. I got 2 bookshelves back there. That one's full. That one's getting full. Damn it, this is like my screen right here is mirrored, so I don't know what I'm pointing at. This right here is my actual like TBR like pile in a sense. This is my TBR shelf, like books that I want to read this year. I just put there. And as I get books in the year that I still want to read, I'll put them right there. So what's good? How y'all doing? I hope you've been reading, like we say, okay? I just want you to start reading, stay reading, and never stop reading, okay? That's the motto, all right? And also turn the fucking page, all right? Let's talk about what I've read in this past January and this early part of February. We'll just mash them together a little bit, just a little bit. Actually, fuck that. We're not mashing it together. I'm going to give you a separate Valentine's February reading recap because I'm reading nothing but romances this year. Not year, this month. My bad. No. I cannot go a full year reading romances. I would go fucking crazy. But this month I'm reading romances. Now I didn't start off the month doing that because I started with the Inheritance Games, which isn't a romance at all. It's really not a romance. The romance is like a side plot, to be completely it's like a sister plot to the main mystery puzzle plot. So that's not really what, anyways, I'm getting off tangent. I would like to restart this entire episode, but I really can't because I love my stream of consciousness. And so I really don't want to I don't want to take you guys out of my stream of consciousness. So I'm not going to, but just bear with me, okay? It's only been 2 minutes. We're going to get into the episode right now. So January was a very interesting month of reading for me because I started with this whole like picture of all these things that I wanted to read and then only ended up reading one of them. And then the rest just kind of happened, which happens to everybody, right? That's why you have never-ending TBR piles. You want to read something, but something else gets in the way and you accept it, okay? If you want to read something, you just read it. You just read it. So let's start with what I read, okay? The first book that I read was actually, I tried to restart reading Stallinghouse, okay? This bitch is still on my TBR shelf because I tried reading it last year, didn't get very far, tried again right at the beginning of January, and I was like 2 extra chapters in from where I stopped or so. And then my acquaintance, a person I know through TikTok, Tim Fasciola, sci-fi fantasy author, an epic fantasy author, sent me the arc for his book 2. Now, if you had watched any of the previous videos, which you might not have, so let me just tell you, last year I read a sleeper banger novel called A Vengeful Realm, Balance of Scales. And it was this epic fantasy adventure written by this guy named Tim Fasciola over on TikTok. He's a great creator. He gives a lot of like authoring tips, but just a lot of good like general content. In general, the book was sleeper because it was amazing, an amazing action fantasy. This man knows his choreo. So I connected with him a little bit over TikTok. He enjoyed my review of his. I was like gagaing over his book 2. I was like, bro, let me know when book 2 comes out. So he sent me the link to the arc over on NetGalley, literally the 2nd week of January. And I was supposed to be reading this. I was like, fuck this. I'm not going to throw the book because I don't like throwing books. But fuck that. I'm going to read A Vengeful Realm, Breaker of Chains. All right, Breaker of Chains, which is book 2 in his epic fantasy trilogy, A Vengeful Realm. So I read that in like 2, 3, 4 days or so. it was really, really good. It was just as good as book 1. Slightly a little bit less as good than book 1. Maybe they're on the same scale. I don't know. I haven't fully gotten my thoughts around book 2. I don't think it suffered from book 2 syndrome at all, because it held up. Like, it held its own. It did what it was supposed to do, which was usually book 2s in a trilogy are a bridge book between the foundational book of book 1 and the surprise factor, and then the climactic like battle scene climax, and then the ending of book 3 of a trilogy. Book 2 is just to bridge the two together, right? And it did that very well, while also giving us dope choreography. First of all, why does my camera keep doing this? Why do you keep doing? Okay, thank you. It gave us dope choreography. It gave us dope characters. It took away some characters, which I was kind of sad about, but I mean, it happens when you have so many characters going on. But then it did a really nice setup for book 3. And and where I think book 3 is going is, I think book 3 is a 1v1v1v1. That's what I think it's going. I think there's 3 1v1s that are gonna happen in book 3 in order to tie this out. Okay, you're gonna have Zephyrus, who's our main character, protagonist, against Phoenix, who was this gladiator champion whose mind got taken over by the evil god Paxaran. So I think it's gonna be Zeph versus Phoenix is what I think it's gonna be, because Zeph was a gladiator for a certain point of book 1. That's like what he was doing. Then I think it's gonna be Thraina versus Skeleton King Belrich, her uncle, because she thought she previously had already killed the Skeleton King, and then she escaped her homeland, and then turns out whoever was in the mind of the first Skeleton King is now in the mind of her uncle Belrich. So there's a new Skeleton King running rampant, which is the reason Thraina was traveling around this world trying to accumulate or trying to acquire these 3 like god armor / weapons. What do you call them? I'm just gonna call them god items. It was a cape, it was a sword, and I think it was like a belt or some other, maybe it was a helm. I can't remember what the third item was, but yeah. So I think it's gonna be Thraina versus Belrich, and then I think it's gonna be Layden versus Damascus, because Layden has been kicked out of his homeland for going against the king, who at that point was Damascus, because the old king was dead. And Damascus is trying to follow his mother's like marionette teachings, and is trying to like convince him to go after the wizards, go after these usurpers, go after these revolutionists and things like that. So I think it's gonna be it's gonna be 3 1v1s, or it's gonna be like Zeph helping Thraina against the Skeleton King, Thraina helping Zeph versus I think the Zeph Phoenix is gonna be a 1-on-1 for sure, and then Layden having the help of Thraina and Zeph on his side to help beat up Damascus. I think that's what I really want that to happen, because I think that looks like how it's setting up, basically, right? It looks like how it's setting up. What is his focus? Brother. Whoa, come back. Thank you. Fuck. One of the best parts about this novel, action was already on point, right? Zephyrus got a fucking magic sword. And I don't mean a magic sword like it's a magic sword, right? It's just a hilt. But because he is of his family, and this blacksmith built this sword only to be used by his family, and he's a magic gladiator, basically. He's a magic user. When he like evokes magic through the sword, then the blade comes out. So the blade is like permeable. Ignore that thing I just did with my hands. The blade is permeable, and it's so cool. It's such an interesting take on a magic sword. That it's not, it's like, oh, the blade is already there, but it can go flaming and it can go icing and all that stuff. No, like there is no blade. The blade is his magic, like going through the hilt, and like his magic shapes the blade. It's so cool. So cool. I would highly recommend you guys go read Vengeful Realm, Scales of Balance, and then Breaker of Chains. Book 3 is coming out later this year, I believe, and he already like teased it online, and I think it's amazing. It's a nice red color. I love it. I'm gonna buy all 3 once book 3 is out. I'm gonna buy all 3 anyway. So I have book 1 on ebook, but not like physical copy. So I'll just buy all 3 when it comes out. Next, okay. So I have the Atlas Paradox and Atlas 6 on my shelf. And I read them both in 24 hours because they were like big, important reads to me. So my plan was, when Atlas Complex Book 3 comes out, I'm going to read it. I want to spend a whole day reading this book. That did not happen. That did not happen for me. For moi, okay? Things just got in the way and I just couldn't get to reading it. And so I haven't read it yet. I was supposed to read it in January, read it in a full day, record my like live reactions to it, post them all on TikTok, have you guys go watch it on TikTok, and I was gonna post a full Atlas series review on here. Hasn't happened yet. And I've gotten like a little bit, not desensitized, but like I've gotten a little less hype about it. I haven't heard a lot of people talking about it, so I don't know how it is, how it ended up with people. I think maybe I saw somebody saying how the complex ending didn't really go well. I'm not sure, but I'll be here to tell you guys my thoughts when I do finally read it. And even though I made an Atlas 6 and an Atlas Paradox archive review, I'm going to not make an Atlas Complex archive review. I'll make a full Atlas series archive review. That is what I will do for you, my lovely viewer. So I was supposed to read that, but I didn't. And I wanted to say that because what I did read was a shit ton of manhwa. And if you're not familiar with what manhwa is, manhwa are Korean comics similar to manga, which are in black and white. Manhwa are in color. Basically it. And most manhwa are like scrolly types, and you read them as you would like any other comic, like top down, right to left, whatever it is. Like manga, which is left to right. Sorry, right to left. Apologies. So I read a ton of manhwa. So I started one called Flag Bearer, which is simply like, it's a new one. It's new. Nothing serious is going on in it. But the premise is a similar premise to Magi. And in Magi, which is my favorite manga of all time, in Magi, the idea is that you have these Magi which choose these king's candidates, humans, and then send them to a tower of trials. And if they get to the end of the tower, they acquire a vessel, and that vessel houses a specific being, a deity, and the king's candidate that can then evoke the power of the deity through themselves and give them more power and things like that. The idea is that only one vessel can belong to any king's candidate, but there's like outliers in the story, there's singularities and things like that. But the whole point is a Magi chooses a king's candidate and helps them on their way to like achieving their lifelong dreams, or some of them like become actual kings of kingdoms and things like that. So in Flag Bearer, you have librarians who are trying to uncover the secrets of the world, and they get sent on like quests, and they have a partner who is the person who's supposed to be like kind of like their bodyguard. And so sometimes these partners are actual flag bearers. So this is a similar like premise early on to that. I don't know where it's going, but that's how it starts. And it also starting with them joining a librarian exam. A little bit of Hunter x Hunter starting action right there, okay? Next one is called Doombreaker. Now Doombreaker is pretty good. It's pretty good, all right? It's not a clone of Soul Leveling like the rest of the ones that we're gonna talk about in a sec, but Doombreaker is pretty good, but it has a very common trope in manhwa. It's called regressors. And regressors are basically something like this overpowered MC cannot defeat the big bad enemy in whatever timeline the story starts with. So then he like gets sent back in time to redo his life, but with all of his memories of his previous life intact. He just gets to redo his life starting at a younger age. So maybe his skills are reset, his body is reset a little bit, but his brain still knows what happens, so he can plan accordingly. Things like that. So that's what focus. There you go. That's what a regressor manhwa is, and there's so many regressor manhwas out there. It's literally a trope. It is literally a trope. It is aggressive, but Doombreaker's pretty good. There is great action, great plot line, great scenes. The MC himself is pretty cool. A lot of these regressor ones are pretty cool because the MC is not stupid. The MC is actually very sharp in many cases. So they're like able to actually pre-plan for events that they know are coming up, actually, do them ahead of schedule, get stronger, gain allies, gain different allies than they had before, because they understand, oh, this person was at this point in their life where we are now. Maybe if I meet them now, have a different personality, and I can befriend them before they turn into like the ice cold person they were in that other timeline. Things like that, right? So I really enjoy it. Doombreaker is pretty cool. I think you'd like it. I got my boy Canvas on it. He caught up in like in a few days, and he also really enjoys it. So I'm just going in chronological order of things I was reading, right? Because there's a reason for it. I read a book called A Mark of Kings, and if you saw my previous winter book haul video that just went live, I got a lot of books from Wraithmark Creative, and one of them was A Mark of Kings. These are all the books I got on ebook and Amazon in December on their sale. So I was starting the book, and I was like, I want to read something to bridge me between, you know, finishing Doombreaker and whatever I read next. Let me just try Mark. Let me try one of these Wraithmark creative titles. I only got through 54% of the book. I only got through 54% of the book, and here's why. Okay, here's why. Excuse me. To me, here's what I thought. So here's what I thought so far, right? It was overly descriptive, slow pacing. It felt a bit annoying only because the lore dumps felt like actual dumps of information. It wasn't packaged well, in my opinion. There were just walls of text, no new paragraph indentation, no break in terms of conversation. Sometimes it was just a whole page or 2 pages of just like text. And it made it to where like reading the lore wasn't interesting. That's how I felt, right? Reading the lore was not interesting to me, so I didn't really I just didn't want to continue reading it. And I think I would like it if I finished it. I just couldn't. I just could not finish it when I was reading it. I think I might pick it up later in the year if I'm like in a lull and I just want to like read it and finish it and see what happens, because there's a book 2 to it. But book 1, I just couldn't fuck with it. It just didn't hit me like I was hoping it would, you know? So here's what happened, right? January, winter anime time. Solo Leveling gets an anime. So Solo Leveling went live this last month, and I haven't talked about it much on here, but one of the first manhwa, if not the first manhwa I ever read, was Solo Leveling, and it was and still is one of the best manhwa I've ever read in my lifetime, up there with Tower of God, except Solo Leveling ended. It's a very good story to get through, because you can get through it pretty like well. It's not a long one. It's like 250-ish chapters, something like that. Something between 200 and 250. So it's not a long manhwa at all. And Solo Leveling put shit on the map. It literally made its own like story a trope, right? So the story is that this hunter in a world, in the human world in Korea, in South Korea, because since they're Korean manhwa, most of these stories take part in Korea or have Korean names. So in South Korea and across the world, these dungeons started appearing, and along with the dungeons appearing, also certain humans developed powers. They awakened, and so the people who go into dungeons are called hunters. And the way the hunter system works is everybody is awakened with a preset determined amount of power, and your power level determines your class, right? If you're F class all the way to national level hunter class. So our main character, Sung Jin-woo, is an F class hunter who is running dungeons to make sure he gets enough money to pay his mother's medical bills because she's in the hospital, usually per usual. So he joins this one dungeon run, and in there they find a new dungeon, a dungeon inside a dungeon called the second dungeon, and they go into it thinking, oh, maybe there's like riches and treasure in here that we can keep for ourselves instead of reporting to somebody else. But here's what happens, right? Everybody but 3 people who go in that room get slaughtered. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch the anime, then go read the manhwa. They get slaughtered. But Sung Jin-woo is a 4th person in there who stays in that room, about to die. And he has this aggressive will to live. And then he gets a blue panel in front of him that says, do you want to be a player? Yes or no? If you say no, your heart will die within 1 second. If you say yes, you might live. He says yes. And then he wakes up in the hospital. The arm that got amputated off is back on again. His leg that got amputated off is back on again. And he's like, what is going on? And then he has this blue panel that he always sees that gives him quests and rewards and basically some sort of system has taken over his life. So if he does the quests the system asks him to, he gets rewards to like stat points to buff his body and his power. He gets a stamina refresher, and then he gets a random mystery item. So he basically is like playing his own video game. But the key thing here is, I told you guys that the whole point of the hunter power system is you don't increase your power. You are stuck at that power level. Sung Jin Woo is the only one who can level up. That's why it's called solo leveling. This all happens as the exposition. So solo leveling really put dungeon, hunter / awakeners, gamified power-ups, and only the overpowered MC, only the weak, poor MC can now power up and become the strongest. Those tropes, solo leveling really popularized back when it was really popping, because I read it back in like 2015, 2017 is 2018, I think was when I read it. So it's been out for a while. But it really popularized all these tropes to where so many manhwa, if you ever go online to Webtoon and you see like the action manhwa list, they're all like hunter, dungeon, hunter, regressor, dungeon, hunter, like they're all the same tropes and things like that. But solo leveling is the OG and really put shit on the map. And the anime is amazing. The most recent episode that just went live before recording this, bro, they're doing wonders with the animation here. They're doing it better than they did Tower of God and God of High School. So they definitely learned their lesson by fucking up God of High School, okay? Come on, come back, come on. You're almost there, thank you. They fucked up God of High Schools, but they're not fucking up solo leveling. And I appreciate that. And they didn't change the names. It's in Japanese, but they kept the Korean names, which I also appreciate. But that's solo leveling, 5-star read. If you haven't read it, read solo leveling. You will not be disappointed. It might take over your entire life. I'm just saying. So, after solo leveling, I'm really in a manhwa doom scrolling reading kind of phase, right? I'm really wanting to read more manhwa. I don't want to read books for a while. So I just go onto webtoon.com and go to the action, like manhwa genre section, and I just pick. Like, I'm just going down the list and just picking ones that I want to read, which is how I find Doombreaker in the first place. So I just start finding solo leveling clones, essentially, and or action manhwa that are similar to Regressor manhwa or Dungeon manhwa, Dungeon Hunter manhwa. And so I read another like 6 or 7. I read 8 more manhwa, but I read 6 more of like the same trope. And so I want to talk about them because I read them and I want to say like that's about them. So the next one I read was Academy's Genius Swordmaster. The premise here is it's a regressor manhwa. It's not a dungeon break manhwa. But the premise here is that Ronin, a very skilled swordsman, is one of the only 2 people left in humanity / this attack team of his army that is fighting these giants that have appeared in their world. And these giants slaughtered everybody else, and he's the only one left, and he finally kills a 3rd giant that has invaded them. But what happens is, after the 3rd giant's dead and he and his commander, who's almost dead already, they're like almost celebrating, like, hey, we should go back. Mans turns around, hundreds of enemies are just like pouring through the heavens, and so he's like, oh fuck, all right, let's try this again. But then his commander's like, no, you're not gonna kill them. Like, this is not possible. This is not gonna happen. Let me kiss you real quick, and by kissing you, let me vomit a time travel jewel into your mouth. So now, you have this time travel jewel instead of me. I'm gonna die in this timeline, but you're gonna go back in time, and you're going to fix this. Is essentially what happens. So he gets sent back in time to his childhood days, before he like learned swordsmanship, before any of all this happened, and he has to figure out a way to, you know, he's basically trying to get to the bottom of where do these giants come from, how do they invade our world, is there like an evil organization in our world? There's always an evil organization in your world. Who is the evil organization in our world who's doing this, all that stuff. He's trying to figure all that out. Once again, retains his memories, and because he retains his memories, he retains a lot of his body, his mind to muscle connection. So he goes back in time, but he's already a bloody good swordsman. So he's already fucking everybody up at like a top tier level as like, I don't know, a 15-year-old, 14, they're usually 14, 15, something like that. So It's decent. It's average, but it's pretty good. The next one is called Transcension Academy, which is basically a complete, just like comical parody of the dungeon. It's basically a comical parody of solo leveling without the overpowered necromantic ability. Transcension Academy is basically this poor F-class MC is trying to figure out a hunter academy to go to that'll get him a good hunter's license, so he can start doing dungeon runs. But what happened? Everything's too expensive and he's poor as fuck. So a app on his phone gives him an ad for Transcension Academy, which is a hunter academy, which says we will make you a transcended hunter, not a S-class hunter, a transcended hunter. And you can join for the low price of your entire bank account. So he was like, well, what do I have to lose? Here's my entire bank account. It's not much anyway. So he joins Transcension Academy, and the gamified overpowered poor MC develops this ability. All that stuff happens. It just goes on from there. It's very comical. It's the most comical part about it is I'm going to fucking scream if it keeps autofocusing. I'm gonna have to fix this before the next episode. I'm really sorry that it keeps doing this. I keep trying to fix it and keep getting fixed. I'm so sorry. But anyways, what happened, or the funniest part of this entire story for me is his sole focus as a reward for anything is just money, because he needs money to access the lectures in that app that give him the power-ups and to buy the weapons that he wants through the marketplace in that app. So he just needs money for his phone app microtransactions. Is basically what the parody is. So I think it's funny. It's very comical. It'll give you a good chuckle. So go ahead and check out Transcension Academy. Now, if you like breeding and breedable waifus, I suggest you check out My S-Class Hunter, and here's why. So My S-Class Hunter is a combination of the regressor gamified dungeon hunter trope, and it has a monster collecting aspect to it. So our MC, Eugen, is an F-class hunter, but his brother got S-class hunter abilities. And so his brother in the initial timeline is a very accomplished guild master, and Eugen's bottom of the barrel. His ability makes him cursed to everybody around him, because essentially his ability is called Custodian, which lets him give supportive powers to whoever he brings under his custody by telling them like a keyword, basically. But the issue is that the buffs that he provides aren't good enough to get him like any sort of like, hey, you're a good support class kind of, title. He's just shit. And the other caveat to Custodian that nobody knows except... Oh, sorry, my light just fell, but I freaked the fuck out. My bad, folks. My bad. Let me just fix that real quick. Okay. Living in a house alone will really do shit to you. Okay, we're back. Okay, let me talk about this book real quick, okay? But let me talk about this manhwa real quick. So basically, his Custodian ability gives him the abilities of his specific person. Let me back up real quick. If somebody who he has given his Custodian ability to, if somebody who is under his custody dies, their abilities get transferred to him for the span of 24 hours. Which is why whenever they go to any dungeon and anybody in his custody dies, he's still able to get the fuck out of there, because he now has their abilities. He can run away. So he's cursed. He's basically cursed. And something happens in the previous timeline to where his brother dies. He gets his brother's ability. He gets a time travel jewel that lets him go back in time, I think like 10, 12 or so years. And he takes that because he's like, I want to save my brother and everybody around me. So when he gets sent back in time, he also gets a few new abilities that also go well with his already Custodian ability. And he's able to redo a lot of things the right way. I'm going to put a panel on screen for you. And I think this is why you should read this. That's why you should read this manhwa, for the breeding partners that are the main character supporting cast. This one will also give you a hearty chuckle. It's pretty average, but it's pretty good. We're gonna go on to another one. Another manhwa. Regressor, Dungeon Hunter, Gamified, Overpowered MC. But we're adding Norse mythology onto this, okay? This one is aggressively Norse because the whole the dungeons in this world are based off of Norse landscape. Like you can have one that's like a Helheim. You can have one that's Svartalheim with like elves. You can have one that's Jotunheim with the giants. You can have like those kind of landscapes in the dungeons that the hunters then have to go in and conquer and shit like that. So our MC, Jaehyun, low class once again. He goes into a dungeon run. He sees a mysterious light, as all MCs do, only he can see that light, and he follows the light this way, right? He's going this way. Just kidding, he's going this way. So he goes that way. One of the ways. And finds a mythic item. Oh, by the way, the manhwa is called Mythic Item Obtained, if I didn't already say that. He finds a mythic item called Odin's Eye. He's like, oh shit, sick. A guy like me would have equipped that immediately. A guy like him is like, let me just put it in my pocket to be safe and sell it later for good money. A guy like me would have equipped that frame one. So he goes out of the room, sees somebody has slaughtered his entire party. And this assassin was sent after him. He's like, oh shit, if I want to live, what the fuck do I do? So here's what he does. He equips Odin's Eye. And you know what fucking overpowered ability Odin's Eye gives him? He gets a blank skill card, okay? You know, what do you think a blank skill card does in any sort of game? What do you think the blank skill card does? It lets him copy the abilities of any ability that he sees. So he copies the assassin's spell and uses it on the assassin, and then he's great. He's good to go. All that stuff, right? And then he also gets the opportunity to go back in time and redo shit, blah, 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 blah. I like mythic item obtained because when he goes back in time, Magic Academy trope, which was also an Academy Genius Sword Master, but that was the title. Magic Academy trope and this woman. So if you don't want to read Mythic Item Obtained for any other reason, read it, this woman. I'm gonna put it on your screen. Once again, this woman. So now that we've gotten the horniness out of the way, let's move on to the next one, okay? So the next one is called Boundless Ascension. One that's on the same level as Doombreaker. Not as good as solo leveling, but on the same level as Doombreaker, okay? This one's pretty dope. Dungeons, Awakeners, Gamified, Necromancer ability, which is the same as solo leveling, and then Tower Climbing, which is why it's different. So Song Hyun Han is a F-class dungeon hunter who for 7 years has been training to try and take the to try and get his hunter's license. But for 7 years, his stats have never increased. He's never gotten an innate ability. He's never gotten any sort of ability that would give him any sort of power to go beat up monsters in a dungeon in order to get revenge for his parents who were killed by dungeon monsters. So for 7 years, he's just absolute shit. And he finally gets kicked out of the gym he was training in because the guy was like, dude, you're so shit. People don't want to come here and train because they don't want to see you here. And he was like, dude, that's so hurtful. So on his phone, he gets an invitation to the Tower of Trials. The Tower of Trials basically invites not just him though, which is why I like this one more, because it invites other humans, other hunters from his world as well to compete in trials. And they're either solo trials or group trials or PvP trials or PvE trials and things like that. But as you climb the tower, you get more and more and more abilities and things like that. And then you can also leave the tower to go back home, or you can stay in the tower and keep climbing up and things like that. I had to take a breather. So Sung Yun Han joins the tower because he's like, there's no other, I have nothing else to do. He's hit rock bottom basically. So he goes in the tower, and you know what he gets as his first fucking ability? Necromancy. Not just any necromancy. He gets to absorb the souls of whoever he kills. And any ability, every ability that he gets has a way to level it up through use of the ability. So necromancy started at like rank F or class 1 or level 1, and it got all, and you can like level it up. So as you level it up, he can absorb creatures, he can absorb humans, He can absorb the stats of the people that he absorbs. He can then absorb the abilities of the people that he absorbs. It just, he's fucking broken. And he's also sharp as fuck, so he makes good decisions, etc. So that is Balanced Boundless Ascension. I like it a lot. I actually genuinely like it a lot. The art style is great. The story is really cool so far. I would highly recommend you go read Boundless Ascension. 3 more. The next one's called Lone Spellcaster. I did not read past like chapter 8. I thought it was fine. It was the same tropes, except I just didn't like the art style. I'm just gonna put it out there. I'm just gonna get that over with. Undead Adventurer is a manga. It's not that long so far because it's a relatively new manga. The anime it's airing this season, essentially. And here's literally what I wrote down. Okay, a low-level adventurer is eaten by a dragon in a dungeon and is shit out as a skeleton that can gain EXP and evolve into stronger monster classes. That's basically the story. And then you have your harem starting. So check it out if you want to. I think it's cute. I think it's nice. It's quaint. I enjoy it so far, and that's about it. Now, this next one, though, you know, shout out to my man's Corey Barnett. Corey on Instagram, Jacory on Instagram. He has recommended me some pretty good stories so far. So if you trust mine, just know I get these from some trustworthy people. Okay, this is a manhwa called Villain to Kill. None of the tropes, half the tropes we've talked about, the other half are new tropes, okay? This one still has a Hunter's Awakened trope, but no dungeons in this one. This one has a reincarnation trope inside of it. And it is a heroes versus villains trope with an overpowered MC, or an MC that can level up. So in this world, as a human, when you awaken your powers, as a villain or as a hero. Quite literally, you get villainic or heroic powers. That is how the system works. So you have top level class hero Cassian, who has witnessed the death of one of his best friends at the hands of 2 other top class heroes. So when he goes to beat them up, he gets sniped by a 3rd hero he didn't see. So he basically gets killed by 3 top class heroes. He does not know why, but he gets reincarnated. Now here's the twist. On the other side of the world, and this is not a like go back in time or anything. He gets reincarnated into the exact same world and the exact same time when he died. Okay. On the other side, in high school, still in Korea, because this happened in America. So in Korea, there was this kid named Ganggu Gwan who was getting his head dunked into a toilet by bullies, and he died, unfortunately. So Cassian gets reincarnated into the teenage body of Ganggu Gwan, high schooler. Still, all of his memories intact. His soul just transfers bodies, basically. And you know how it goes, like memories stay in the soul, all that stuff. And it turns out that Ganggu Gwan, later in his timeline, if he had lived, would have developed apocalyptic villain powers. He was gonna be the villain who could bring about the apocalypse. But now it's Cassian controlling that body. So his whole goal is to figure out who killed his best friend, why, what was the plot there, and who killed him, and basically get revenge. But he has to do it as a villain. So it's really, really good. I really like the characters in there so far. It's like 180, 190 chapters, something like that. So it's a pretty long one to get yourself into, which is good. There's meat in it. The power-ups are cool. There's good banter, etc. Most all of these that are recommended to you all have good banter, because that is one of my key requirements for any good book, any good story for me. Is there has to be good banter involved. So I think Villain to Kill is pretty good. I think you would enjoy it. If I were to give you a ranking of what I think you should read, Solo Leveling first, Doombreaker, Balanced Ascension, Villain to Kill. Then you can go into Academy, Genius Swordmaster, Transcension Academy, Mythic Item Obtained, and then S-Class Hunter. I think I would give you those in that order if I were to recommend you to read something. And then so that's it for the manhwa portion. We're gonna go back to books, okay? But that's actually everything that I read in January. So we're not gonna go back to books because I told you I was gonna wait to give you February later. Damn, that's a short. This feels much shorter. It's 40 minutes. So that is everything I read in January. It was a lot of manhwa, few books in there. but I think you guys got the gist. Now, I will be back in a couple of weeks to talk about February, and I hope you guys are here for that, because that's going to be a fun one to talk about, especially with the books that I've been reading. That being said, I appreciate you listening this far. If you got this far, if you're new here, subscribe, like, and leave a comment about what you're reading. If you've read any of these books that I've mentioned recently in this video, let me know what you think about them. If you haven't read any of these books, let me know what you want to read, if any of these sound interesting to you. If you're not new here, do all that except for subscribe, because you've already subscribed. I appreciate you. Mwah. Anyways, I will see you guys in the next video, which I don't know what the topic is, but I'll see you guys in the next video. And if you like this, share with a friend. Bye.